we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promising vision.
Chris, original guitar player of Savage Grace. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, you started the band in '81 in Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yep, 1981.
And you moved to New York some years later. Please, can you tell us about the early days of the band Savage Grace?
The early days, we did a lot of very hard work to get the band together, and we went through a lot of different people. We went through a lot of different singers, and then when Brian East joined the band, he was a big help because he had a lot of experience that I didn't. He'd already been in touring bands. He'd already, had management. He was in a very popular band in Seattle. So when he got in the band, we really became a more professional band. And so he was a big help. But it was, very hard going in the beginning, trying to get the right singer. We went through Dwight Cliff. He did a demo with us. And then we got on the Metal Massacre 2 from that. Then he didn't work out. Then we got John Burke for the Dominatrix EP. And he was a little bit too crazy. So, those early years were very tough. A lot of personnel changes.
But to be honest, I don't want to say anything bad about your old singers, previous singers. But for me, you found the one you found now is amazing.
Well, that's when I first heard Gabriel Colon, I said, the first thing I said to him is, why didn't I meet you in 1984?
Because
why didn't I meet you in 1980? I'll tell you a story about singers.
Yeah.
In 1983, I went one night to see a show at the Troubadour, and the Troubadour was only 5 minutes from my house, very close. So I went down there with my girlfriend, and there were 3 bands playing that night. Pandemonium, Malice, and Metallica.
Metallica.
And, yes. And Malice blew Metallica off the stage. Bad. Very bad. And that night, James Neal from Malice, his microphone didn't work after the 3rd song. And he just kept singing over the band with no microphone.
Wow.
And you could hear him perfectly. And that night I was so discouraged. I said, how am I ever going to make it in music if I don't have a singer like that? I might as well quit. And I seriously thought about quitting music that night, because I said, I can't compete with a guy like James Neal. From my opinion, I think James Neal had the greatest voice in the history of heavy metal, for my opinion. And, later on, I made friends with him. We toured with Malice and Motorhead in 1987. We did 20 dates with Motorhead, and Malice was on the first 5 shows. And James Neal was incredible. And so having a singer of that quality, and I always wanted to have a singer with that very high, clean type of voice like TNT, very high.
from Norway.
Yes, very high and very clean. And so when I heard Gabriel Cologne, I said, that is going to be my singer. And thank God, you see, because of this stupid pandemic thing, he didn't have a job. So I said, I'll give you a job. You're going to be in Savage Grace. And he said, okay. So I've had two great singers in my career. I had Mike Smith, who was a great singer, but totally unmotivated, didn't want to tour, didn't want to do anything. I don't know what was wrong with him. Mike Smith probably cost me $1 million. If Mike Smith had stayed in the band, I'm quite sure we would have been signed to a major label and we would have been much, much, much more successful. But these things happen in life.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because when you see the lineup, it's only you, but this singer, yeah, I was really shocked when I heard it, and I want to talk about it later on, more about him and about the new band and so. But first of all, I want to ask you about back to the very beginning. What bands influenced you to start Savage Grace?
As a guitarist, I started playing guitar in 1977, I think.
Wow.
And so my biggest influences were Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent
with
was
an
a
own
big
opinion as well.
What's that?
With an own opinion as well.
Yes, he's very. He's we're similar people.
Yeah.
I actually met him in 1987. Very nice guy. But anyway, he was my main influence on guitar. And then around 1978, 79, I heard the UFO Strangers in the Night double LP. And I heard Michael Schenker. And I said, who is this? I said, whoever this guy is, this is how I want to sound, like this. And so Schenker became my biggest guitar influence. And when I was putting the band together, I was in a cover band for a very brief period. We only did 2 shows, but we played songs like Armed and Ready. We played Rock Bottom. We played some Scorpions. We played mainly European metal, not American metal type songs. And then when Brian East joined Savage Grace, very early in our history, probably 1981, he said, I want you to hear a record. Come over to my apartment. I want to play something for you. And he came over and he said, listen to this. And I heard the sound of the motorcycles going around, and then gung, 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 Saxon Motorcycle Man.
Great.
And I said, who are these guys? He said, this is Saxon. And that was it. I said, that is where we're going. And the reason I like Saxon is because they had everything. They had the speed, they had the power, they had the melodies, they had the vocals, incredible drummer, Pete Gill back then. They had very good songs, good song construction. The only thing that Saxon did not have was the look. When I turned the album cover over and I saw the photo of the band, I said to Brian East, I said, these guys will never make it. They will never, ever make it because of the look. And I loved their sound. I loved Strong Arm of the Law. I loved Wheels of Steel. But I knew they would never make it. And I'll tell you why. In Los Angeles, you cannot do anything unless your band looks great. I don't care how good you sound. If Saxon had lived in Los Angeles, they'd have never even been booked. Same thing with Metallica. When Metallica was in Los Angeles, nobody gave a damn about them. They could barely get a gig. When I saw them with Malice that night, there were about 12 people there. 12.
Wow.
So, image, when you live in Los Angeles, image is a big, big, big thing. Then in 1982, one night, we had a singer before Dwight Cliff named Kelly Rhodes. He was the brother of Randy Rhodes. And he called me, said, I want you to go down to the Starwood tomorrow night in Hollywood. There's going to be a band there called Motley Crue, and they're going to be the next big thing. And I never heard of Motley Crue. They were just, I think it was their first show. And I went to go see Motley Crue. And I took one look at them. I said, these guys are going to be huge. And their music was utter shit. They're one of the worst sounding bands I ever heard in my life. The guitarist had the worst guitar tone I ever heard in my life.
But they looked good.
But they looked incredible. They had a very uniform look. They looked very much like the New York Dolls, but even better than the Dolls. And that's what they were trying to do. They wanted to be the New York Dolls. But even as shitty as the New York Dolls music was, they were still 10 times better than Motley Crue. But I said to myself that night, I said, these guys are going to make it because they will hire songwriters, they will hire producers, they will hire people to play their instruments in the studio. And that's exactly what they did. They had a marketing plan that was maybe the second best in the world in heavy metal. The best marketing plan was Metallica's, but Motley Crue's marketing plan was second. They were almost as good. So that taught me a lot about the image. See, in Europe, they didn't care as much about image.
No.
You know, a band like Saxon, no problem. They could play everywhere and nobody cared what they looked like. As long as the music. But in America, no chance. Okay. Now, I saw Saxon in 82 at the Whiskey A Go-Go. I was right up on the stage, only 100 people there. Okay. They played 2 nights. The first night, a band called Rat opened, and the second night, Metallica.
Great
opened.
band. It's a good band.
Yeah, Rat I knew for many, many years in LA. And then the second night, Metallica opened. But in those days, very early 80s, Saxon was a very, very powerful live band, even on a very small stage like the Whiskey A Go-Go. They put on an incredible show. And a year later, they were touring in America, supporting Iron Maiden. And they blew Iron Maiden off the stage 2 nights in a row. The first night at the San Bernardino Swing Auditorium, which was an incredible place to see a show. It was a very dangerous place because people used to blow up fireworks, big fireworks in the crowd. You could lose an eye or an ear. And it was very dangerous, but it was a great place to see a show. And Saxon blew Iron Maiden off the stage. The next night, they played at Long Beach Arena, and they blew Iron Maiden off the stage again. Very powerful live band, but they could never overcome the image problem. And I'm sure that's what destroyed the band, and that's what prompted them to break up with Graham Oliver and Steve Dawson. And after that, Saxon went downhill because Graham Oliver was the main songwriter. He wrote all those catchy riffs. Strong Arm of the Law, all of that was Graham Oliver. So when they lost him, that was a blow. So anyway, your audience might enjoy some of these old, the history of heavy metal, because I was there. I saw all these things for myself.
It's funny what you're telling, and our slogan is for the passion, not the fashion. but in America it was for the fashion, not the passion.
You're 100% right. You see, but I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why that Metallica, their marketing plan was stronger than Motley Crue, and I'm going to tell you why right now. And I didn't know this at the time. My manager from Black Dragon Records, he explained it to me. If you look like Motley Crue in America back in the early 80s, and you lived in some small town, you'd get killed. Okay, people would just kill you. The only place in America you could look like that would be Hollywood and New York City. Anywhere else, you're going to get beat up, you're going to get killed, stabbed, shot. You cannot do it, okay? Now, if you look like Metallica, you could do that anywhere. Nobody's going to bother you because you just blend in. You look like you work at a gas station. So when a 17-year-old guy would listen to music and say, and look at a picture of Metallica and look at a picture of Motley Crue, say, well, if I'm going to look like Motley Crue, I might get killed. I'm going to be more like Metallica because I can look like that. All I need is a leather jacket, and I can play guitar like that. Anybody can play it. That is my band. Metallica will be my band. Motley Crue, they would think, well, maybe if I look like Motley Crue, the girls will like me. Okay, yes, the girls will like you, but you're going to have to deal with getting beat up every day. So the psychology of it, you see, is very strong. People identify, they want to like a band that they think they can be like them. You see, not everybody can look like Motley Crue. It's too extreme. But anybody can look like Metallica. So that, and the same holds in Europe. We used to meet guys on the road in America who wanted to look like Motley Crue, but they lived in small towns, places like Hickory, North Carolina, okay? And these guys would dress up like Motley Crue and have hairdos like Motley Crue, but they had huge arms and they had teeth missing and black eyes and broken limbs because they were constantly in fights. Okay? In America, to look like that, you have to fight. And it's not worth it. You're just in the hospital all the time. So the Metallica marketing strategy is even more superior to the Motley Crue.
Wow, these are cool stories because, as a European, you don't know the exact what's going on in America, because we Europeans, I know the thrash metal, for example, from the Bay Area is much more popular here in Europe than it is in America. And with the hair metal, it's something LA and America nice. In America, it's very popular. And here, yeah, Motley Crue is okay, it's popular, but they never play in Holland, for example. Never play in Holland. And if we want to see them, we have to go to Germany or Belgium. We're not so big, Hair metal, glam metal is not that big, And
well, you know what? It never was. Even in the early 80s, there were bands that were very big in America.
Yeah.
That never translated to Europe. They just the people in Europe didn't like them because honestly, the people in Europe have a higher appreciation of music. Okay, so if somebody can really play, then the European audience will appreciate them. If somebody just has a big hairdo and they can't really play, they don't want that because they see it's not real. It's we had hundreds of bands like that in Los Angeles, guys that looked fantastic, but they couldn't even play, and in America they could get away with it because people didn't care. I said, well, the girls would come and say, oh, those guys look great. If those guys came to Europe, nobody would go see them.
No, that's true. Yeah, you're correct. Savage Grace is now back with a brand new studio album. It's entitled Sign of the Cross, and it's released by Massacre Records. Can you please tell me more about this new album? Who produced it? Who mastered it? And is there a certain message you like to spread on this new album?
Okay, this album is set in 1978. I wanted to recreate the zeitgeist of 1978 in the USA, when there used to be big arena concerts in every city, almost every night. They have what they call tailgate parties, where everybody drives their car to the arena,
American
and then they
football
play
games too.
Yes, and
Yeah.
people drink beer and they meet girls and play music, and it was a party, you know. And this was going on in the late 70s all the time, and lots of bands were always out. REO Speedwagon and Ted Nugent and Cheap Trick, blah, 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 blah. Everybody was on the road. And I wanted to recreate that type of feeling. And then for the music, I wanted to create an ambiance that was the combination of 3 albums: Sin After Sin, Stained Class, and Killing Machine.
Priest, yeah.
Yes, those 3 classic Priest albums. I wanted to make an amalgamation that would take people back to 1978. And so when I was writing the songs, Barbarians at the Gate, Sign of the Cross, and Helsinki Nights, I had pretty much completely written in 2010. And I was going to record them back then, but the record company I was dealing with were crazy people. So I kept those songs. I said, I'm going to record these songs later. And I actually have demos of me singing those songs before I lost my voice. But I wanted to create that feeling. And when those Priest albums came out, they were very, very controversial and very, very different from what was going on. So I wanted to take that feeling and translate it to 1978 USA. And if you look at our promo photos of the new band, I wanted to look pretty much like the New York Dolls of 1975, 1976. And when you see those photos, I mean, we look more like the Dolls than the Dolls. The lighting that we used, the attitude of the band, the cockiness. I mean, if you look at photos of the Dolls from 75, 76, and you look at our new promo photos, it's very, very similar. So this whole Sign of the Cross project is a retro project to recreate the ambience of the late 70s. And when I was discussing the mix and production with Roland Grappow, I said, Roland, this is what we're doing. We're going to recreate 1978. I want the state-of-the-art sound of 1978. And Roland has a very large collection of analog outboard equipment. You know, the old AMS reverbs, the PCM 90s, the L1 limiters, all of this old analog gear, Fairchild limiter. And we really accomplished what we set out to do with the sound of the record. And for the guitars, there's one record that stands out to me that Max Norman did, and that is Malice, License to Kill. The guitar sound on that record is extraordinary, especially the song Chain Gang Woman. And so I sent Roland, I said, Roland, I want us to sound like Chain Gang Woman. And if you listen to our guitars, and you listen to Chain Gang Woman, it's very close. Malice to me is one of the greatest heavy metal bands. Very, very, very underrated. And they were
Very underrated.
Very underrated, and a fantastic live band. We played 5 shows with them on the Motorhead tour. And I wish they'd have stayed on that tour, but they left that tour to go tour with Slayer.
Slayer, 86, 87?
87.
Yeah.
And that in England. And that was a terrible tour for Malice. Terrible. It was a big mistake. They should have stayed with us. They would have had a lot more fun and a lot more girls. But anyway, back to the album. We tried very hard to recreate that ambience of 1978 in every way: production, the look, the songs, and I think we've accomplished it.
Yeah, but there's also a little about the message. There's also can you be more precise about the message on the
There are thematics on the packaging, on the album cover, the back of the album, that run through the entire album in the songs, lyrically, thematically, instrumentally. I could expound a lot, but we'll just take a few songs. So the cover is loosely based on the Second Siege of Jerusalem by Saladin. Very loosely based. The first song on the album, Barbarians at the Gate, is loosely based on the Mongol invasions of Europe and the Ottoman invasions of Europe. Sign of the Cross is loosely based on the Second Siege of Jerusalem and the Battle of Hattin. There are constant threads of continuity running through this record. Now, I'll give you another song, Land Beyond the Walls. This is another song that most people, they won't get what I'm talking about. But if you start to think about, what is this? This is all part of, like I told you in our little pre-interview, the world is going through a very dramatic transition.
I see that.
And people are awakening to, how can I say this? The veil of ignorance is being pulled away. And people like myself, who are adepts at this type of knowledge, it is our duty to help pull this veil away now. I've been ordained to make this record. I could have made another record anytime in the last 15 years, but I didn't, because the time was not right. It was not right. But when they enacted this program in 2020, this is when I was called to do this. I was called to do it. And one opportunity after another presented itself to me. All the musicians became available. That these guys would have never been available to me under normal circumstances. They would have all been working. They would have been too busy or too expensive.
Yeah.
Gabriel Cologne would have been in Deep Purple, who knows? So this program created the opportunity for me to do my part of what I'm supposed to do. There are very few people on this plane of existence that we live on that have had the life experience and knowledge that I have. And I could spend days talking about what my life is, what I've been through in my life, but I'm not going to do that. But I will say that this record is going to unlock the consciousness of many, 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 many people, and especially the people of Europe. That's who I have the most special message for. And they are going to understand my message. And they will know that I am with them, as I have always been with them, as they have always been with me since our first shows in Europe. Europe was always our biggest market. We toured Europe twice before we ever toured America.
Oh. And that's why I come to one of the last questions, not the last, but one of the last. It's, what are your thoughts about Europe? I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm from the Eindhoven area, so I know you have special memories about this area.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, that was, I really considered Holland like our second home, because when we did those shows at the Scum
Katwijk.
Yes, and at the Dynamo and up in Groningen, that I felt like we were just at home there. Everybody was so good to us and always showed support. And even in 2010, the
Germany,
people,
yeah, keep it true and so.
Yes, and also at the Rock Fabric,
Fabric, Ludwigsburg.
Yes, yes, there, and the shows we did in Holland. So, I mean, they've always been there to support us. Right. And now, you see, Europe is at a very critical juncture, and this is why it's important for me. It was important for me to do this record at this time, because there's no more waiting now. This is it. Everyone has to put in now. And similar things are going on in America, but it's I could go into it, but it's a different situation. But Europe is more critical.
And about the label, Massacre Records, also a German. It's a German label, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So Germany. Yeah, I know this whole American metal, real American metal, not the glam stuff and stuff, but the real American metal is so much popular here. It was always every band I speak to, American band I speak to, they always have good memories about Europe, and that's great to hear. As a European.
Well, it's a very different touring in Europe. Is a very different experience than touring in America. Very, very different. And for most American bands, they never get a chance to come to Europe. So they it's like a dream, But, the same bands from Germany, like the Scorpions, when they started, we want to get to America. So everybody wants to see something different. But it is a very different experience. And, like Ted Nugent, he hated Europe. He used to hate touring Europe. And people couldn't really understand why. So
in Germany, they are not fan of Ted Nugent in general. So because of his whole attitude, but
Ted Nugent first came to Germany in 1975, and he did a show for one of the German television. It was like a special German television show, and the crowd was very, very reserved. Ted Nugent is used to people screaming and blowing up fireworks and this and that. And the Germans were very polite and they would applaud. And after that, I guess his feelings were hurt. And so And so ever since then, he's avoided playing in Europe, but they don't really care for his music in Europe anyway. So it's best.
I do. I have his records here. But the strange thing about Scorpions, talking about Scorpions, the Scorpions are so huge in America, but in Europe, especially in the home country, Germany, they're not so big, you know. But in America, they are really huge.
Well, you know, the first time I saw the Scorpions was 1982, and they were opening for Ted Nugent. And this was at the LA Sports Arena, and the Scorpions were on their Animal Magnetism tour. And that was the first time I had heard of the Scorpions. I had their Tokyo Tapes record in 1978, and Love Drive is one of my favorite albums of all time. But I saw them live, and they were an incredible, very powerful band at that time. And the reason they got on that tour is they had the same manager of Ted Nugent. I think they were managed by David Krebs. I think at that time, Lieber Krebs. And so he said, well, I'll bring you over to America and put you in front of Ted Nugent. And Americans like the Scorpions because really, I think what it is Klaus Meine, his voice is so unique and so different.
With a German accent?
And the German, and all of those harmonies, all of those vocal harmonies that Dieter Dierks used to make him do on those records. That's very un-American. Americans don't record like that. That's a very European thing. And so when Americans would hear that, they'd say, wow, this singer is incredible. You know, he's, it's really different. It's not like American metal bands. They tend to play in a lot of major keys, whereas European bands play only in minor keys. So I knew the Scorpions would make it. And the thing about the Scorpions to me that's so sad is that Michael Schenker really, to me, is the Scorpions. He probably wrote most of that album. He played all the guitars on Love Drive. And his own brother used to, according to Michael Schenker, Rudolf Schenker used to steal all his money. He never got paid. He never got anything. And he said he never even got paid for a live performance until 1991. So that's sad, because Schenker is really the greatest guitarist for heavy metal. But the Scorpions, incredible, and always did very well. On the other side, Saxon, one of my favorite bands, every time they would tour America, it was a very, not a good tour for them. The band played perfectly. The band was great, but people would just not come out to support them. After they did that Iron Maiden tour, they'd come over by themselves with local support. And, there maybe be 200 people there, 150 people.
Wow.
They just never connected, and very sad. But, they're still playing 50 years later, they're still doing it. So good for them.
In Europe here in the Netherlands, they play every year in my hometown, and they always have a good packed club. So they're still, I think they're one of the most popular new wave of British heavy metal bands, besides of Priest and Maiden, I think. Well,
I mean, honestly, they should be. They should be right up there. I like Saxon much better than Iron Maiden. I like Priest much better than, I liked Iron Maiden's first 2 or 3 albums, but then everything started to sound the same. They're one-dimensional. And so I had friends that, Iron Maiden's the best band in the world. If you listen to Priest everything up to 1984. Rob Halford is so unique
Yes.
in that he has, his alternative lifestyle, shall we say, is part of why he is like that. You see, like to me, Bruce Dickinson is like, he's like what we call in America Velveeta cheese. Velveeta is not really cheese, it's like plastic.
A snob.
Yes, Rob Halford to me is like a cheese that was fermented in a cave in France and left to sit for 200 years and is covered with blue and green mold and has all types of variation. Halford is very complex. All of his phrasing, his lyrics, this is basically a tortured personality. And when you have a tortured personality as an artist, they make very interesting art. Whereas someone who's very grounded and very normal and it's not the same. This is why Halford is so great.
And about talking about Halford, you're the only original member in Savage Grade, but you found the greatest musicians from all across the world, and to keep the legacy of Savage Grace alive. Can you please introduce your complete current lineup, and especially talking about your new singer who sounds like Rob Halford in his heydays?
All right. Well, we'll start with the singer. So Gabriel Colon was singing in a lot of cover groups, like Judas Priest cover bands. I don't think he ever was in an original band that had a record deal or anything.
How old is he? What's his age?
I think he's about 39 years old.
Okay.
And so he'd been around for years doing all of these, just trying to stay alive. And so when my agent friend, Matt Ferrara, basically he talked me into doing this new record. And I said, Matt, we have a great singer. Do you know anybody? He said, yes, I know someone. And when I heard the demo tape, I said, that's our singer.
Oh my God.
We're going to take him. And because I could hear that Halford influence, and he loves Halford. Gabriel, he loves Rob Halford. And we like the same singers. I said, do you like Graham Bonnet? He said, I love Graham Bonnet. So we had that in common. I said, okay, because that's the kind of vocals we're going to do. Rob Halford, Graham Bonnet, very melodic, but with that hard edge. Gary Barden, another one of my favorite singers. So he was the first person that I recruited for this new lineup. Then I recruited a guitarist from Brazil named Kiko Shred. And we started to work on the songs. But then I noticed that Kiko, he was really a virtuoso type of guitarist, like a Ritchie Blackmore, Yngwie Malmsteen. He needed to solo a lot. And our music is much more structured. We're structured more like Priest, more like Maiden. Everything is structured. We don't have big breaks for a guitar solo. We don't do that. So I told him, I said, Kiko, this is not fair to you. You're not going to be able to showcase your talent in this band. You're going to be throttled. This isn't good for you. And so he agreed. And I said, okay, I'm going to cut all the guitars. I will record all the guitars. So then I needed a bass player and drummer. And Kiko recommended two guys in Brazil, Marcus Dota and Fabio Carrito. And so I contacted them, and we talked about production, how we were going to do the record. And then I found another drummer named Griffin McCarthy. And I said, well, okay, well, let me hear him. And he recorded 2 songs. He recorded Barbarians at the Gate, and he recorded Rendezvous. And I loved those drum tracks. Really, I really loved them. Very powerful. And so I said, well, you know, what's your schedule like? Because we might be going to Africa to record on Capo Verde Island. And he said, I'm very busy. If you need me, it's going to cost you a lot. And I was like, oh boy. So he actually became, he had so many obligations that I was afraid that if I recruited him, that he wouldn't be able to finish the record. So I said, I better find somebody else now. And so I let Marcus Doda record 1 song, and that was Stealing My Heart Away, which is probably the easiest song on the album. It's very straightforward, mid-tempo. But he put in an intro, and he put some fills in that song that just made it just jump at me. And I said, you're one of the best drummers I've ever heard in my life, and I've heard a lot. So I put Marcus Doda in the band to finish the rest of the songs.
Awesome.
Fabio Carrito is probably the best bass player in Brazil. And since we recorded the record, I've added a guitarist named David Sandoval from Mexico City. So he's the guitarist you see in the video. And he's an excellent guitarist. He's recorded 2 albums with his own band called Riding. And he's going to be a tremendous addition to our live show.
Great. So the legacy of Savage Grace is saved and ready to invade the world and to let people. Is there any chance we can see you in Europe?
Well, the situation is, a lot of it depends on the success of this record. And if this record is as successful as I hope it will be, then it will be quite easy for us to get over there. Now, I think that I'm very much hoping that when we release the single Star-Crossed Lovers on March 21st, that is going to break this record, that is going to be the song that takes us over the top. I had a chat today with a guy from Poland who I did an interview for, and he said Star-Crossed Lovers. He said, no, Rendezvous is your song. He said Rendezvous will break this record. And it's funny that he said that, because my brother, who's heard everything I've ever done my whole life, he said Rendezvous is the song. Rendezvous will break this record. So now that's 2 people that have told me Rendezvous is going to break this record. I think it's going to be Star-Crossed. But if Star-Crossed does what I think it will do, then I'm going to start hearing from the promoters, and I'm going to start hearing from the agents. There are a lot of shows in Europe in June. There's Sweden Rock. There's some other big festivals. The only thing I'm concerned about is the war in Ukraine, because if that escalates, that could cause a lot of problems. And so I don't know if we'll be able to get there as soon as June, but I'm hoping to get to Europe this fall, October, November. That would be ideal for us. And hopefully in the next 2 months, we'll be able to tour Mexico, Latin America, and South America.
Cool. I want to thank you for the interview, and I really hope we're gonna get out of this whole drama we're living in at the moment, and that the true comes true, and that that life gets back to normal. And I really hope we can meet up this year on the road to have a drink and a personal chat together?
Well, I would love nothing more to get there, because all the guys in my band, you know, they don't have all the road stories that I have, and it's time for them to make their own road stories. And so we would love to get over there. I'd love to meet you. I've really enjoyed talking to you tonight. You're a man of conscience. You're a man of morals. You're a man of character. And it's rare that I meet people like that. So I really appreciate talking to you, and I appreciate you helping us.
Thank you very much. And it was also very cool to talk, to have a pre-interview together. And that's something if people want to know more, they have to meet you and have these great talks to you personal, I guess.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. And I hope we're going to meet very soon. And I wish you all the best for the new album and all the good luck. Can you have a last shout when it's come out and to tell people where they can order, maybe?
The record will be released in Europe, the USA, and Canada by Massacre Records on May 5th, and it will be released in Brazil by Hellion Records on May 5th. And I have pre-order links up on my website, savagegracemetal.com. I also have the pre-order links up on the Bandcamp, Savage Grace Bandcamp, and on the Massacre YouTube channel.
Okay. Thank you very much for talking to you. And I hope we will meet very, very soon, my friend.
Me too. Thank you again, Marco.
No problem. See you soon. And good luck.
Thank you.
Cheers.